In this video, we're going to make a simple box that has a feature called a finger joint that connects the sides to each other. We're also going to be practicing some more sketching skills that will come in useful for a lot of your projects in the future. So the sketching tools that we're going to practice using are mirroring, patterning, projecting, and filleting. And so by the time you're done with this tutorial, you should be comfortable with all of those skills. So to start the box, I'm going to start by sketching one side of the box. And so because I'm doing the side of the box, I'm going to sketch on the right plane. So I'm going to create a sketch here. I'm going to select the right plane as the sketch plane. I'm going to change my view so I'm looking at that head on. I'm also going to press P, which hides all of the planes over here. I don't need to see them while I'm working. So I'm just going to hide them from view. And I'm going to start by drawing a bunch of lines, starting at the origin. And notice that as I'm dropping these lines, they're all automatically snapping to be constrained to either vertical or horizontal, and also to line up with each other. So these automatic constraints that are coming in here as I'm putting in the lines are gonna just save me a lot of time later on as I put in the rest of the constraints to make sure that my sketch is fully defined. So I'm basically sketching the outline right now of what I want this box to look like, and you will sort of see this come together in just a moment. It'll make more sense exactly how it's organized. But for the time being, just sort of copy these same shapes, making sure you get all these lines to be sort of vertically and horizontally aligned with each other. Okay, and then over here, I've sort of left this side deliberately not closed, and you'll see why later on, but I do want to make sure that this endpoint and this endpoint are aligned vertically. So I can press V on my keyboard, or I can do this constraint right here, vertical. Right, so that way if I extend this out, you can see both of those move together. Right, we can also see that because of some of the automatic constraints, see all of those moving together at the same time. And if I do adjust these, they all move together as well because of the constraints that were automatically placed. So I'm going to put in a few dimensions and constraints to turn what I have black. I can make this side 5 inches, and from here to here I'm going to make that 3, and the distance for this little offset right there, I'm going to make that 0.2 inches. And then I'm going to put in an equal constraint. So this offset right here, right, we can see that now there's no freedom for that to move in and out anymore. This one still can move up and down. I don't want it to be able to do that. I want this offset and this offset to all be equal. So I'm going to click on that small line and this small line, and then E on my keyboard is the equal constraint. I also want all of these zigzags to be the same length as each other, just sort of evenly distributed along the side of the box. So I'm going to click on all of these vertical lines, E for equal. You can see they just adjust. I'm going to do the same thing with all of these horizontal lines on the bottom. Right? And now my sketch is fully defined. I'm going to add a construction line that I'll need for the next step. I'm going to put it aligned with the midpoint right here, and then going up vertically until it hits that. And I'm going to use this construction line to mirror what's over here to the other side, so I don't have to draw all of those lines again. I can just use this mirror function. So this is the mirror tool right there. I'm going to select the line that I'm mirroring across. So basically what I'm saying is I'm going to take this stuff, I'm going to pretend that there's a mirror right here, and all of this is reflecting over that mirror to the other side. So first I select the line to reflect over, and then I can click and drag a box that'll select all of these things at once, flips them over to the other side. And then because I didn't mirror this top line right here, I end up with that gap. I can either select the line to make it mirror, or I could have just drawn a little line in there. Either way is fine. But now I have one side of the box, but I'm going to add a few other features before I move on to the next thing. So first, I'm going to draw a rectangle. I'm going to choose a center point rectangle because I want it to be centered on the center of the box. So that way I can put the center right there on that line, and then I can draw my rectangle. And then I can add in dimensions to fully constrain it. Oops, I accidentally clicked 2 lines, so that turned into an angle dimension. I don't want that, so I'm going to escape. I'm going to go back to my dimension tool. I'm going to change this to 1.5. I'm going to change the height to 0.75. That seems too tall. I'm going to make that 0.5 actually. And then I'm going to use a tool called a fillet. So a fillet, this is the tool right here. What a fillet is basically taking a sharp corner, so like a right angle like you have on the rectangle, and it just rounds it out. So a lot of times in your designs, you don't really want sharp corners just because it's like something to poke yourself on and it's not as strong as actually having a rounded corner. And so you might start with something that has sharp corners and then just go back in later and fillet those corners. So I'm going to click the sketch fillet. And I'm going to click on all 4 of these corners. And what that does is it's automatically filleting all 4 of them equally. So when I click outside of that, it's giving me a dimension here so I can say basically how rounded it is. So if I put a smaller number, you can see it's still rounded, but in sort of a smaller radius. And if I go in and I change this to a bigger number, it increases the radius that is rounded out there. But because I clicked all 4 corners at once before putting that dimension in, it automatically made them all equal, which is really convenient for if I do decide to change this number later. So I'm all set with that tool. I do notice that this is still blue, right? So I want it fully defined. The only part that isn't defined is that it can move up and down. I can't move it side to side. I can't change its size, but I can move it up and down. So I'm going to need to add one more dimension. I can just say from the top of this to the top of the box, I'm going to make that dimension 0.25. So again, this sketch is now fully defined. I'm going to add some other things just for decoration and mostly just to demonstrate some other tools that are possible for you. So I'm going to draw a circle. I'm going to make this circle line up with the midpoint of this and with the midpoint of this, right? So by hovering over them, now when I draw the center of my circle, it is automatically aligned to those. I'm going to draw that circle. I'm going to dimension it to be 0.5 inches. And then I'm going to draw a center point arc. I'm zooming in with my scroll wheel and I'm drawing a small arc. Oh, actually I don't want a center point arc. I want a 3-point arc. I'm going to put 1 point on there and then the other point also on the edge of the circle, and then I'll sort of move it out like this. And I want the center of this arc to be on that circle, so they're coincident. So I is the keyboard shortcut for that, right? So now I can move this arc like that, but it's stuck on the circle entirely. And I'm going to dimension it to be 0.15 inches. Okay. Now, what I'm actually doing right here is I'm drawing a flower, right? So this is one petal of the flower, and I want to repeat that same shape all the way around this circle. But instead of having to draw that a bunch of times, that's where this patterning tool comes in. So over here, this is, right now it's set to a linear pattern, but if I click the arrow, I can choose a circular pattern, right? And just like that to make the pattern. And you can see, like, it drew me this big circle. It's taking this arc and it's creating a pattern where the center of what it's patterned around is right here. But I actually want it patterned around this small little circle. So I can click this square and drag it until it's over here in the center of that circle. And now we can see it's taking this shape and it's rotating it around. And here you see 3x is how many times it's repeating that shape. Instead of 3, I'm going to turn it to 5. And then I'm just going to click my mouse to create that pattern, right? The only reason this is still blue, if I click on something and try to drag it around, is just that the pattern can sort of rotate any which way. So I'm going to just arbitrarily pick any dot in that pattern. It really doesn't matter. And the center of the circle, and press H to make them line up horizontally. And now I have this flower that I've drawn. And just to demonstrate the linear pattern, I'm also going to take this flower shape and I'm going to repeat it so that I end up with a bunch of flowers across the side of this. So I'm going to click and drag so I have that whole shape selected. I'm going to go back to my pattern tool. This time I'm going to select linear. Right? And you can see now it's made 3 of the flower. I'm going to change 3 to 4. Right? And then over here, you can see it says 1x, meaning like vertically, it's not repeating. There's just one row. Right? But if I wanted it to repeat, I could change that 1 to a 2. Right? Now I have 2 rows of flowers and 4 flowers across in each row. I can also change their spacing and the direction. Right? So when I click this arrow, now my row goes down instead of up, right? Because it actually fits on the box. And I can drag this arrow out, right, to change how spaced out they are. And you can see this number right here is giving a dimension to it. So I'm going to make that number 1.25. And this is saying that there's 1 inch vertically spaced between those. And I'm going to leave that be. And then I'll click and it will create that pattern for me. And you can see I now have a lot of dimensions here. It's a little hard to look at, but everything is fully defined. I'm actually done with this sketch. So I'm going to click check on that sketch. And then I want to extrude it. We're actually going to make a solid box where we can see all of the sides. So I'm going to create an extrude. I'm going to select the sketch. And right now it's not extruding the flowers. It just extrudes the outside of the box. And I'm going to change that. I'm going to make it extrude all the centers of the flowers, but not the other parts. Okay. And I'm going to change the depth of the extrude to 0.2 inches. And when I rotate my view, I can see that I have created that side of what will ultimately become our box. And in the next video, I will make the other sides. Before I finish this though, one thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change the names here. Just because I want it to be more descriptive. Like as I start to add more sketches and create more sides of the box, it's going to get really complicated if I just have like sketch 1, sketch 2, sketch 3, sketch 4, sketch 5, and I don't know what's what. So I'm going to rename sketch 1 to box side sketch. And then extrude 1, I'm going to rename it as well to box side extrude. And now if you have this as well, you can go on to the next video.